If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
And you're jumping into the deep end of the Stone Zone. I'm your host, Roger Stone. In case you missed it, this past Saturday, there was yet another assassination attempt on President Donald Trump. This, of course, got very little media coverage, but tragically, a man named Austin Tucker Martin, 21 years old, breached the secure perimeter of the president's estate in Florida, Mar-a-Lago. The president and First Lady Melania Trump were not there for the weekend, which raises a number of very serious questions about this entire incident. The man slipped into the gate, I guess, when a vehicle entered, immediately confronted three law enforcement officers, two Secret Service agents, and a Palm Beach County Sheriff's deputy. When he pointed his shotgun at them, they opened fire and killed him. This once again underlines what a dangerous time we are in America, and that the hateful, nasty, vicious rhetoric used by the left against President Donald Trump, a bigot, racist, Nazi, all of that, that is what generates this kind of activity. Now, we know very little about Austin Tucker Martin, other than the fact that he is deceased. He had no previous record of political activity, no seeming radicalization. This raises, once again, more questions than it answers. But I pray every day, every night, for the safety of our president and the First Family and all of our political leaders of both parties in these difficult times. Meanwhile, Team USA defeated Canada 2-1 in overtime to capture its first Olympic gold medal since 1980, in a move that brought great pride to America and shifted the entire Olympic narrative back to patriotism from the woke athletes who are using their positions to sow seeds of disunity about what's happening in America today. After their victory, President Donald Trump personally called the players to congratulate them. The FaceTime celebration happened right inside the locker room where athletes gathered around a phone held by FBI Director Kash Patel, who could be seen in the locker room celebrating with the gold medalists. Head coach Mike Sullivan said the president told the players he was proud of them and that their victory inspired the entire country. And judging by packed watch parties across America, he wasn't wrong. I think it was Justin Trudeau who was quoted, former Premier of Canada, was quoted as saying, "You'll never beat us at our game." Well, we just did. The president even invited the team to attend the upcoming State of the Union address, offering military transportation to bring them to Washington if needed. The presidents responded instantly they'd be honored. Team captain Austin Matthews called the moment an honor, saying representing the United States and bringing home the gold meant everything to those in the locker room and millions of Americans who were cheering them on. The celebration reflected something bigger than sports, in my opinion. It's national identity. For years, Americans have been told to downplay their patriotism, being chided for loving their country that we've been told was founded on racism and bigotry. But moments like this remind the country what shared pride looks like, and that for our once, at our core, we are all Americans. This is a great moment for our nation, and if you think Canada is mad after losing the gold in hockey, just imagine how angry they will be after President Trump negotiates the statehood for the provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan that could conceivably be our 51st and 52nd states. You see, under the Canadian Constitution, any province, that's like a state here in the States, can declare its independence by a simple vote of the majority of the people within that province. That would then make them independent. They then could apply for stateship, a process that does take some time and the approval of a majority of the states. But Saskatchewan, which is the smaller of the two, one of the wealthiest in terms of rare earth minerals, oil, gas, potash, and other natural ingredients, as well as Saskatchewan, somewhat larger, but also very rich in energy and rare earth minerals, could ultimately provide 4 additional Republican U.S. senators and a passel of new Republican House members. These are among the most conservative and productive provinces in Canada. So keep an eye on those independence movements in Alberta and in Saskatchewan. They are very real. I know some of the people involved. They are well-meaning Canadian patriots, but they're tired of essentially providing the riches and the wealth for those in the eastern part of the country who produce, well, nothing other than crime, hopelessness, and drug addiction. Meanwhile, the Mexican officials confirm that President Trump has killed the infamous drug lord who goes by the name of Menche. We are going to be, later in the program, going to be interviewing Derek Maltz. Derek is the former acting director of the Drug Enforcement Administration. He had a terrific interview on Fox this morning. Even President Trump complimented on him. We're going to analyze what's happening in Mexico to a much greater degree with El Mencho. But it has been confirmed that the killing of this notorious cartel kingpin, known as El Mencho, occurred because of the use of U.S. intelligence. El Mencho led the ruthless Jalisco New Generation cartel, a violent rival to the Sinaloa cartel. The U.S. State Department had offered a $15 million reward for his capture. Mexico's Ministry of National Defense confirmed that American intelligence helped to make the strike possible. Deputy Secretary Christopher Landau called it proof that the good guys are stronger than the bad guys and that there's no more pussyfooting around with the Trump administration on watch. If you are a cartel thug, your life on the planet is endangered. We'll be talking about more of this later in the program, as I say, with Derek Maltz, who is the former acting administrator of the Drug Enforcement Administration and an expert on the subject. A federal judge has permanently blocked the Justice Department from releasing the section of former Special Counsel Jack Smith's report dealing with the classified documents case against President Donald Trump, reinforcing a major legal rebuke to the prosecution. U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon granted requests from President Trump and his former aides, Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira, to prohibit disclosure of the report's second volume. The order bars the Attorney General, now and in the future, from making it public. The ruling follows Cannon's earlier decision throwing out the charges entirely after determining that Smith had been unlawfully appointed special counsel. Because the case ended without any conviction, the judge emphasized that the defendants retained the full presumption of influence and that releasing investigative accusations, which were produced after Mr. Smith's appointment had been determined to be illegal, would violate basic due process protections. Cannon also noted that the report contains extensive grand jury material and protected discovery. Historically, special counsels release reports only when no charges were filed or guilt was established in court, not after a failed prosecution. President Trump's attorneys praised the decision, arguing that an unconstitutional prosecutor should not be allowed to publish unproven and false allegations motivated in this case by malice. Justice Department lawyers themselves acknowledged that the report should remain internal and warned that releasing it could undermine the separation of powers. Smith, you'll remember, brought 2 criminal cases in 2023, both of which collapsed after Trump won re-election. He resigned before the new administration took office. With the charges dismissed and the appointment deemed unlawful, that completely delegitimizes Smith's entire extra-constitutional investigation. Now, he himself, I believe, should be prosecuted over his role in the illicit Arctic frost spying and other scandals emanating from the Russian collusion hoax, as well as the January 6th Fedsurrection overreach, the raid on Mar-a-Lago and the phony documents case. All of this is calling out for both accountability and justice. President Donald Trump taking direct aim at big tech influence yesterday, calling on Netflix to fire Susan Rice, the former national security advisor, in a stunning interview, which we played yesterday here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Susan Rice actually threatened President Donald Trump and threatened corporations or institutions who, quote unquote, take a knee to the president. This was a chilling comment by Susan Rice. I see precisely why the president called on the Netflix board to fire her. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Don't go away because we'll be right back. We're here 5 days a week bringing you news, history, politics, style. Sometimes we even talk about food, but it's always interesting. So thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. And whatever you do, don't touch that dial or leave us online because we'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
It is a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone. Is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Well, California Governor Gavin Newsom, who is probably the putative frontrunner for the 2028 Democratic presidential nomination, is now facing biting criticism after comments he made during a campaign-style appearance before black voters in Georgia, where he attempted to portray himself as relatable by joking about his academic performance, which he said was poor, and saying that he struggles to read prepared speeches. Newsom told the audience he was a 960 SAT guy and he wasn't trying to act smarter than anyone else. Newsom's patronizing and politically calculated measure shows how low of an opinion he has of black voters. I would say that it was in fact racist. The backlash against Newsom came quickly online, including criticism from rapper Nicki Minaj, who accused the California governor of talking down to his audience rather than having any kind of sincere dialogue with them. This is yet another instance of a Democrat trying to manufacture authenticity instead of presenting clear policies or accomplishments. Gavin Newsom, who is a member of one of the wealthiest families in the country, he is a Getty, and is extraordinarily well connected, is, as I said, probably the 2028 presidential frontrunner for the Democrats. And I think he was, in this case, trying to distance himself from his undeniable elite background. Who can forget that while average Californians were locked down in the COVID-19 restrictions, Gavin Newsom was at the extremely exclusive French Laundry restaurant in California, living it up. You see, rules for thee, but not for me. That's how the Democrats operate. This reminded me of when Hillary Clinton claimed that she always carried a bottle of hot sauce everywhere she went, kept it in her purse, which was probably not true, and a naked, although I think clumsy appeal to black voters. Instead of appealing to them, this actually alienated black voters who laughed at her for her pathetic pandering. President Trump did much better among African American voters than any Republican in history because he talked in the same manner to black voters that he spoke to any other voters. And I think he recognized that African American voters want the same thing that all voters want. They want safe neighborhoods and communities. They want job opportunities. They want quality public schools. They want low inflation. They want reasonable food prices. They want reasonable gasoline prices. They want affordable and available housing. This has always been one of the great mistakes of the Republican Party before Donald Trump came along, thinking that you had to have messaging designed specifically for black voters, not recognizing that black voters, particularly with a rising and more viable black middle class, that those voters want the same thing that all voters want. It's very interesting now that a plurality of voters identify as independents, and authenticity is becoming more and more important to the electorate. The polls that I saw recently show that as many as 47% of voters identify with neither Republicans nor Democrats. This growing political independence has a lot to do with the fact that voters are distrustful of both major parties, distrustful of the national institutions like the media, and that there are an entire subset of voters out there who turn out when Donald Trump is on the ballot, but do not turn out when he is not. This explains the 2022 elections, for example. That is the great challenge to Donald Trump, getting those voters to turn out in the midterm elections. And they have been working very hard in these special elections to prepare for the upcoming onslaught. 2026 is going to be crucial. Those who are throwing in the towel and saying that the Republicans will already lose the midterm elections, they don't understand that in America today, a day, a week is a lifetime. Our politics is that volatile. When we come back, we will be joined by former acting Drug Enforcement Administration Administrator Derek Maltz to break down for us exactly what happened in Mexico and what it means for America. Don't go away.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. Now we are most honored to have with us Derek Maltz. Derek recently served as President Trump's acting administrator for the Drug Enforcement Administration. He had an excellent interview on Fox and Friends, and the president even commented on how outstanding it was, and we're very honored to have him with us today. Derek, welcome to the Stone Zone.
Roger, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Let's kind of start from the beginning because news is so fast moving here. Many Americans may not fully comprehend what transpired. So if you would, tell us what happened in Mexico before we get into the implications of it.
So number one, the world needs to understand that the most wanted fugitive in the Western Hemisphere, this narco-terrorist El Mencho, is no longer with us because he was destroying our families and communities and our children in America and terrorizing the citizens of Mexico. So he was shot dead in a very high intense special operations operation down there in Mexico, where the Mexican military were trying to go apprehend him or just locate him, and they got into a firefight. So the good news is that he's no longer here to cause destruction to our country. But you got to remember, the CJNG cartel is and has been one of the most dangerous narco-terrorist cartel in the world. And they're not just operating in America. They're sending drugs all over the world. And it's a huge national security, public health threat. Thank God President Trump recognized that Americans come first, and we had a whole government approach. We've been working with the Mexican counterparts, and ultimately they did a great job, and they took them out. One thing I will say, Roger, because, they've lost like 20 or 30. It's not official yet. Mexican military guys on the front line, so we want to definitely thank them for their bravery and their heroism to, fight this battle against these terrorists.
This, of course, cuts against the narrative by some who say that the current president of Mexico, Sheinbaum, shields the cartels, that her anti-cartel rhetoric is exactly that. What's your analysis of that situation?
So, Roger, great question. So I was lucky enough, thanks to President Trump putting me in the acting DEA role, to be at Dulles Airport last February when we greeted a Mexican military aircraft with 7 high-level Mexican operators, kingpins like the Los Zetas, cartel leaders, Z40, Z42 got off the plane. Mencho's brother was on the plane. And by the way, that same day, there was a total of 29 high-level Mexican targets removed from Mexico to the U.S. Since then, by the way, they have also removed 37 this past January of 26 and another 26 last August. So a total of 92 very high-level, very, very important figures in Mexico were sent to America to face justice. Roger, this has never happened in the history of the country. So that's tremendous cooperation. Another thing, the killer of Enrique Camarena, the DEA agent in 1985, an individual by the name of Rafael Caro Quintero, he was also sent here by President Sheinbaum and Omar Harfouch. So the Mexican government, since the past year or so, since President Trump has been in office, has done amazing work to support our joint efforts to destroy and decimate the cartels. What I will say is there was the leadership of this administration to be able to make it clear to the world with decisive messaging that we're not going to tolerate this any further, and we need the support. So bottom line is that she's out there, her troops are out there going after cartels every day, destroying labs, taking mass amounts of drugs and assets and guns off the playing field, and right now they're a solid partner as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I've known Donald Trump for 50 years. People who may not get it yet should. This is a man who says what he means and means what he says. And he's very serious about his challenge to the cartels. The cartels are very powerful. They're very well-funded. They're very dangerous. But Donald Trump is determined to end this deadly flow of drugs into our country. Derek, what is the likely immediate impact on the United States and the dangerous fentanyl that has been flooding into our country?
Okay, so the good news is there's already been an immediate impact the day Donald Trump took the office of president. So we have seen a decrease in fentanyl production in Mexico. We've seen a decrease of fentanyl seizures at the southern border. The bad news is that we're seeing a lot of methamphetamine, a lot of cocaine still coming into this country. We also are seeing much more dangerous synthetic opioids like carfentanil, like nitazene, isonitazene, metanitazene, protonitazene, and that stuff is more deadly than fentanyl. We don't know if all of these particular substances are coming over the southern border or if the cartels are actively involved in the production. We do know that the Chinese criminals are the ones behind this whole catastrophic disaster in our country, and they're working very closely with the cartels. So, that they've been trying to destabilize our country by weaponizing drugs to go after our future generation. So very strategic, very, very sound plan by the criminal networks. So we have a lot of work to do. in regards to like the immediate impact over Mencho's death, I mean, right now there's just going to be more and more violence with the cartels fighting with each other, which is not a bad thing because they're killing each other. But obviously we're concerned about the safety and security of the Mexican citizens and, of course, American citizens that are down there.
You kind of anticipated my next question. I was going to say, are there other aspects and activities such as money laundering, which may have been and continue to be beneficial to governments adversarial to the United States here, such as by China?
Well, I'm glad you said that, but unfortunately it would take me all day to talk about this. I'll try to make it very brief, okay? Let's just make it clear. I ran the Special Operations Division for 10 years before I retired. The attack against America with chemical substances at a Chinese lab started many years ago. Of course, everyone knows they've been providing methamphetamine precursors for so many years to the Chinese Mexican cartels. But what people don't realize is they started a bombing campaign, literally sending synthetic cannabinoids and cathinones, K2 spice, bath salts into the country for several years. Then they switched over in 2012 with fentanyl directly to America in the mail. We went and briefed the former Attorney General, Eric Holder, on Operation Deadly Merchant because we saw the perfect storm of death and destruction in 2014 with a lot of the deaths that were coming all over the country because of the Chinese working with the cartels. In 2015, it was a game changer because they started providing the key money laundering services to the Mexican cartels. That gave the Mexicans an incentive to work closer with them because they want to get paid. So they developed very, very sophisticated trade-based money laundering and mirror transactions, picking up large amounts of cash in America, buying property, buying real estate, buying farmland in strategic locations, and then laundering the money back to the kingpins. But, Roger, here's the thing that people are not talking about that's really critical to understand. Under the last 4 years of the Biden administration, Chinese nationals came in at record levels, and a lot of them were setting up these very, very sophisticated marijuana grow operations. Why is that important? Because the marijuana that they're growing is very, very intense THC, pure, like 30% or more, but they're spraying Chinese pesticides on these crops. So we have Americans thinking it's very safe to smoke marijuana, but when it's in a black market and run by the Chinese Communist Party, that's not safe. And the next thing I'm going to say, and the last thing I'm going to say, is the vapes now that are coming in at record levels. The vape products, they're coming from China illegally, and they're putting substances in the vapes that are harming our kids and destroying their lungs. And we're seeing an increase from definitely from the marijuana with psychosis, schizophrenia, anxiety, and it's causing more damage to our kids' brains. So what's the bottom line, Roger? This is a full-blown chemical war to the country. And unfortunately, the cartels have been used as a proxy, in my opinion, just like Hezbollah is used as a proxy by Iran, to destabilize and destroy our communities and our country. So I try to put that in a very concise way. It's a little long, but I hope you understand.
No, I think it was excellent. One of the questions I really failed to understand is why we still do not have a federal law that prohibits Chinese nationals or those fronting for the CCP, because there is no private property in China. Everything belongs to the government. From buying up prime ranch land, farmland, in some cases public facilities such as toll roads, bridges, tunnels, harbors. You cannot buy land in Canada unless you are a Canadian. Yet here in the United States, we allow Chinese interests to buy up some of our most valuable real estate. Here in Florida, with great fanfare, our governor announced that he would pass a law prohibiting the Chinese from buying property in Florida. But then when you read the small print, what you found is they were only prohibited from buying land if it was contiguous to a, quote, national security facility. That's not even defined anywhere in the law. I'm not even sure what that means. The sooner we have an absolute ban on the Communist Chinese or those fronting for them purchasing strategic properties of the United States, in my opinion, the better off. I think you would agree that it's now fair to say that terrorism and narcotics trafficking are far more complex today than simple drug smuggling was as we once understood it.
Well, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more the way you articulated that. Thank you for understanding this, and I wish we'd be able to connect the dots at the highest levels. Unfortunately, I don't want to be mean, but there's some people that advise our president that don't have the background and the experience and the skills, in my personal observations and opinion, because we should be connecting these dots. I've been screaming from the rooftop for many years on the national news and in Congress about this, supporting families that have died, that buried their loved ones. And it's all this giant strategic plan against our country, and we're still looking at it in silos. And we also were the ones, Roger, that infiltrated Hezbollah's global drug trafficking, money laundering operations with the Mexican cartels many years ago. We also were the ones from my old operation that indicted Maduro and all of these other characters that were operating with the Cartel de los Soles in Venezuela. So it's a giant mess. China, Russia, Iran engaging with criminal activity to fund their operations. It's not just drugs, human smuggling, weapons trafficking, and a lot of other nefarious criminal activities. But it's all so they can pay for their radical agendas to destroy our country. But we're not doing a good job. There's too many silos, Roger, as you know, I'm sure you know, what's going on with we're doing a lot better under President Trump with this whole of government approach, the Homeland Security task forces. But people have to be held accountable when they're not sharing the critical information that's needed to connect all these dots together on these very, very serious adversaries. And so thank you for understanding that very complex set of points.
Yeah, here at home, we've had Americans dying at record levels from Chinese poisonings trafficked here by Mexican cartels, as well as other cartels in the Caribbean. The change of government in Honduras is going to crimp a substantial amount of narcotics trafficking that came from Honduras, never mind the president's brave action in Venezuela. I saw you quoted as saying that this crisis in America is not a red crisis or a blue crisis, but a red, white, and blue problem. I could not have agreed with that more. When we come back, I want to ask you a couple things. One is, what can the average American citizen do in this important fight to end this kind of illegal activity and violence on American soil? I also want to get into the current situation in Puerto Vallarta and exactly what's going on there. If you're just tuning in, we're talking to Derek Maltz. He is the former administrator of the Drug Enforcement Administration under President Donald Trump, and we'll be right back with more of Derek Maltz on the other side. You're listening to the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial or leave us online, because we'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
It is a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone. This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Derek Maltz, who served previously as President Trump's acting administrator for the Drug Enforcement Administration. He brings 30 years of service in law enforcement, national security, and international strategy, and we're honored to have him today in the Stone Zone. Derek, what is the situation in Puerto Vallarta today? What's going on there?
Well, look, obviously there was complete chaos yesterday, most of the day. There were people panicking. There was gun battles in the streets. There was buses, cars, and actually buildings that were put on fire. It was actually like a war zone. It looked like Afghanistan or Iraq, honestly, right? And there was blockades, not just in that area, but up to, like, I was told, about 20 states in Mexico where they had, road blockades. And so very, very dangerous. We all watched social media videos where people were running on the tarmac as flights were being canceled in the airport. So it was very, very chaotic, and I think the cartels were retaliating and trying to intimidate, the world on how tough they are. But they are terrorists, right? We have to remember they're terrorists. And so hopefully some of that settled down today. I've been pretty busy, so I haven't checked some things. I got to call some people tonight. But hopefully our citizens from America and Mexican, citizens are safe or watching their backs, because it's very dangerous.
What will now happen to the new generation Jalisco cartel? In other words, this is an international cartel. They were spreading their poison not just in the United States, but in multiple countries. Will they continue as a force, or will the vacuum be filled by other dangerous cartels?
Well, they will certainly try to continue as a powerful force. And as we speak, I'm sure they're looking at leadership changes and who's going to rise to the top. But unfortunately, that's going to require, a lot of gun battles, and they're going to be fighting with their adversaries. They're trying to compete for the routes, the plazas to get their drugs into the country, and not just into America, but like you said, around the world. So it's going to take some time. I am concerned a little bit on some of the secondary violence that we're going to see after the immediate, shock from the cartel on the death of their leader. So I'm concerned that some violence will continue, but I think it will be handled by the Mexican military and the administration for the most part. I'm hoping, I'm praying that they can contain it, but it's terrorism, right? This is what terrorists do. They try to terrorize people and communities and countries. So.
All right, I'm going to have to end it there. I want to thank our guest, Derek Maltz, a great patriot, a veteran law enforcement officer, a national security expert, and international strategist who has served his country well. Appreciate your breakdown of this incredible breaking situation in Mexico. Derek, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Roger. Have a good day. Keep up the good work.
Many, many thanks. Here's, folks, one piece of good news I want to pass on, and that is my wife of 29 years went in for her 6-month cancer check today, and she is, thank God, now 5 years cancer-free. Thank you, Jesus. So we'll be celebrating and praying and thanking the Lord for this great news, which came to me literally minutes ago. In the meantime, thank you for joining us today in the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We always tell you the stone cold truth here. We criticize Republicans, Democrats, and independents. We tell it exactly as I see it. Thank you for joining us. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
It is a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.